Hello and welcome to our Believe series with Silicon Valley Change. And today we have a ghost. We have a ghost. We might have a ghost. I hope we don't have a ghost. We have a guest. And I'll be telling you a little bit about her. Hi, Allison. Nice to have you here.
Great to be here, Sonia. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm going to tell you 3 bullet points about Allison, and then we will jump right in. So start putting on your hat and thinking about any questions that you have about being inspired, anything that is inspiring to you. So we have an expert on this topic, and come and ask us questions about it. So let me tell you about a little bit about Allison. Allison and I know each other from a little while ago. So 3 things you should know about Allison. And I'm going to do this show and tell a little bit.
I like it.
Somebody is letting us know that on Facebook, you may not be seeing this immediately. So hopefully you'll see this in a little bit. Okay, so from our show and tell, this is what I want to show to you about Allison. Allison's the co-founder and the Chief Innovation Officer of InspireCorps. And here's one of the websites of InspireCorps. Allison, actually, one of the things that I'll be asking you about and that I love is this return on inspiration, this other way of thinking about our ROI. So that's Allison. And Allison is also the co-author with the other people, 2 other people at InspireCorps, with Sandra Spataro and with Jen Grace Barron of the book Dare to Inspire. Super book, highly recommended. We'll drop the link in a little bit later. And finally, Allison has a range of amazing, let me just come back to our main view, has a range of amazing education, from a bachelor's in psychological brain science at Dartmouth to an MFA at American University. Welcome, Allison. We're delighted to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Sonia. It's great to be here.
We're really glad to have you. So first question, just from the beginning, we think a lot about what our guests believe and what's important to them. So my question to you is, what is it that you believe to be true that few other people in your field would agree with you about?
Great question, Sonia. And I'll answer based on really something that we've learned over the last few years as we were really researching and writing our book, which was surprising. It was surprising for us really to learn, which is that, I think a lot of us think about inspiration as being something that we can't control or create, like it's like a muse. And, I'll be walking down the street and maybe something will inspire me and maybe it won't. And also this idea that it's really short-lived. I'll feel inspired for a moment and then it'll go away. And I think one of the things that we have learned to be true is that, sometimes inspiration, you can experience it that way, but the truth is you actually can create it. You can produce it for yourself, and you can make it last. You can actually sustain it over time. It doesn't have to just kind of feel sparky and then flame out.
I have to say that was the most surprising to me in your book, Dare to Inspire, that it wasn't about these amazing things that you can see or have experiences, but it's also you can sustain this feeling, and here are 18 techniques to do so.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit, just to set the base, of InspireCorps so that we know a little bit about what you do, consulting, coaching, any of the things that you do, so that we can go from there in terms of what is inspiration and how does it work?
Yeah, sure. So InspireCorps, we work with organizations and companies. We go in and we help them really design a proven pathway to activate inspiration in terms of their leadership, in terms of how they work on teams, and in terms of their culture. And we do that because it produces better results for them. So we help companies figure out, what are the results they're aiming for and how they can design these systems through their people to support those results that they're looking to have happen.
So that section that I just showed very briefly on your website about return on inspiration, that you kind of take that seriously.
Yeah, we do. Because, what we found in our research, so there's some research that other folks have done on related to inspiration. There's not a lot that has been done out there, but there is some. And it certainly shows that, when people are inspired, they tend to be more productive. That's one example of research that's been done. But when we went out there and we talked to people and learned through our own research, we found, well, it's not just about productivity, which is important, but it's also that you're not just more productive, but you're actually driving better results. So, even more extraordinary results. So it increases the quality of what you're producing. At the same time, there's other really important returns on inspiration, like greater agility and resilience, which, wow, we need that today a lot, right? Like people really need to be flexible and agile. And then we also found that even people, there's like a breaking down of silos, that people connect more with one another. It's like inspiration brings people closer together in their networks, and they can work more collaboratively. And then we also find that people tend to be more strategic in their thinking and innovative, which is also really important outcomes. So these are all very essential sort of business outcomes that people are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Could you give us, just also for context, what is your definition of inspiration?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the first things that we did was, of course, we went to the internet to say, okay, well, how is inspiration defined? And when you look, there's not like great definitions out there. Like, in fact, sometimes they even say, oh, inspiration is the feeling of being inspired. And you say, well, what does that mean? That doesn't really make sense. So we really looked to have it be more concrete and clear in terms of what's happening when you're feeling inspired. That's different than when you feel, engaged or, creative, or, all these other kind of emotions that you might experience while you're also feeling inspired. But what is unique about inspiration? And what we found is that it's really the intersection of these two things that are happening at the same time. So on the one hand, when you're inspired, you have a greater sense of possibility. And I think about it like, if you're looking at a problem kind of like this with blinders on, and when you feel inspired, it's like all of a sudden you see the problem or situation like this, like, oh, this other thing might be true, or this could be true. And so it really opens things up in terms of what's possible. That's great, but an idea is an idea if you don't kind of do something with it, right? And so at the same time that you're feeling this greater sense of possibility and optimism, you're also experiencing what we call in the book invincibility. And
that's a strong word. I really enjoyed that. Please keep going.
Yeah, it's a strong word, right? And to be honest, we had some hesitancy about putting such a strong word out there, right? But it really captures. And the reason why we use this term is because it captures both confidence and courage at the same time, right? Like that there's like this heightened confidence and courage that propels you to want to take action towards whatever it is that you're inspired about, right? So it's like really motivating and kind of pushes you forward. And, invincibility and inspiration, yes, it can be like really big, like you can be inspired about big things and take big, bold actions. But you can also experience it in day-to-day kind of moments. Like, imagine you have to have a tough conversation with a colleague, or, you have this tricky work problem that you're trying to solve, or, you're wrestling with something that you just, you can't figure it out. That in those moments, having even a boost, even a little inspiration boost of confidence and courage and possibility can help drive you forward. In those areas. And so we look at it both as a kind of day-to-day experience that you can cultivate to, achieve your goals. But also inspiration can be life-changing. It can be kind of big moments of inspiration as well.
It also, I know that you use in your work, in fact, it's in your bio, your strengths. These two, possibility and invincibility, they also sound like values, or values or strengths. They sound like hope. You've described possibility as this hope, and invincibility like a combination of courage, confidence that you said. So it sounds like it's very value-based.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And I think another important piece, when we talk about inspiration as being possibility and invincibility together, there's this really third kind of cornerstone that we talk about and bring into the book, which I think is also an important value, which is around intentional practice. So how do you take that spark of inspiration that you feel, but actually bring it into your day-to-day and bring it into, making it last over time so that it doesn't just fizzle out. And so we talk about that as sort of the third, leg of the table, so to speak, is intentional practice that really brings inspiration into life across, a career.
Could you give us an example of yourself using intentional practice? Just something, it could be work related or not work related, but specifically that part of what is intentional. How have I used it?
Yeah. So in our book, we talk about there's several different ways that you can intentionally practice inspiration. One of the ones that resonates a lot with me personally is around energy management. So we know, feeling inspired, it takes energy, right? It's like you're burning energy when you're inspired. And so in order to kind of be in that state where you can kind of tap into it more readily, you have to be mindful of your energy and not just your physical energy, but your emotional energy, right? Your ability to kind of focus. So, for me, really being mindful of energy throughout the day and over the course of time is important. And so I build in a lot of these different practices around sort of, sleep, movement, getting up, stretching. I'm kind of sitting on my bouncy ball, to kind of make sure that I'm engaged, even when I'm sitting. And all of these things are really important to help me make sure that I'm kind of keeping my energy up, but also emotional energy, So I keep a kind of running journal around things that inspire me. And it's a Google Doc, and I'll pop in if somebody sends me a note that's really kind, or if something happens that gives me a lift, I pop it in there and I regularly reference it and read it. And it's a way for me to get that kind of emotional lift when I need it. So those are just some examples. Another key piece I would just mention, because we talk about it in the book, is one of the key engines of inspiration is, for me personally, is around unstructured time. And so it's time to have kind of some white space and just ability to think. And that's hard, especially as the boundaries right now are blurring between home life and work life for many people. If you're working from home, it can be even harder to carve out that space to just kind of process or think or have, ideas emerge. So creating some of that space for myself a couple times a week doesn't happen every day, but really trying to protect it is important for me.
Yes, so I'm hearing you say for intentionality and for doing that intentional routine, the practice of it, the ritual. It sounds like for you, energy is really important, and also this unstructured time, energy almost daily, and this unstructured time on a weekly.
Yes.
Metric.
Yeah. And part of intentional practice too is really planning it out ahead, right? So, this idea of, okay, yes, we can all know things that maybe if we do them, we'll feel better or feel inspired. That's great. But how are you looking ahead to your week to say, okay, I've got these 3 things that are really challenging, and I know I need to be inspired for those 3 things. In that day, what am I going to do when I wake up that morning, or what am I going to do in the course of that day to kind of manage my energy and to make sure that I can tap into feeling inspired? So it's this practice for me of starting off the week, and I do this weekly, looking at the calendar ahead and strategically planning these different practices and routines so that I can tap into inspiration when I need it.
I'm about to ask you in this intentional inspiration, in where we are right now, that most of us are sheltering at home, how can we use these techniques while we're in this situation where there's a lot of uncertainty? But before I ask you, I just want to invite our audience today. I want to invite you to do 2 things. One is to type into the chat something you're already taking away from what Allison is saying, from ideas that are in your head. What are you already taking away about inspiration, how you might use these techniques, what you might do today, this week? So you can either type that, or you can let us know in what ways you want to be more inspired. Where do you want to be more inspired? So let us know those. And I want to ask you, Allison, we are in this weird situation. Most of us are at home. How does inspiration act with us now? How can it help us now?
Yeah, great question. In our research in the book, what we found is that there's these 3 different kind of key pathways that you can tap into to be inspired. So one of the pathways is kind of personal. So you can activate inspiration inside of yourself, things that you're thinking about, things that you're doing, your values, activating your strengths, kind of managing your energy, that sort of thing. Another pathway to inspiration is through people. So through relationships, through, connecting with others, which, in times like these can be not impossible, but more challenging. It's a different way, right, that we have to connect with others. And then the third pathway towards inspiration is the one that I think people maybe disregard the most or don't think of at first the most, which is our environment, that our environment around us can be a source of inspiration, the situations that we're in, how we're thinking about them, and even our physical environment. So I'll tell you that, and so the environment is one place that I think, people can look into, and I encourage you to think about it if you're sensitive to kind of your environment and how it affects you. One of the first things that we did kind of in the sheltering at home process is to really look at our space and how we could reorganize it and redesign it in ways, not big changes, but even just moving furniture around, right, to kind of carve out spaces for each of us. And for me, I'm sensitive to light and sound and my visual environment. So making sure that, it's set up in a way that gives me lift is really important. So those are just some simple things that we did on the front end. And then also I think in terms of the pathway around relationships and other people, I think this is an opportunity to connect with people in new and different ways, And so I see a lot of people getting really creative about how they're connecting with others online and making it fun, So I think those are some just initial thoughts.
So specifically, even just the things that you're doing around you, set up where you're working, how you're working. It sounds like even when you're taking breaks, so try to be intentional, just like you're telling us the surprising thing based on your research that people don't expect inspiration to be lasting. But what if you were to make it lasting by setting things up?
Yeah, and I think another thing that was interesting to us and surprising that we found when we interviewed so many people about what inspired them is how unique it is for each individual. So for me, the kind of environment that I'm setting up around me, may be very uninspiring to somebody else, right? And so you have to be mindful of that, particularly if you have to share a workspace with somebody else. You have to think about that. But, it's almost like we talk about it like it's a fingerprint. And so there's a great opportunity to discover for yourself, to begin to notice, now is a time for reflection, noticing about ourselves and almost taking stock about what are the types of rituals and actions and environment and people who are going to give me that boost and lift and what's not. Right. And so you get to kind of discover for yourself that those most important pieces of what an inspiration practice is for you.
Awesome. So here's what we've covered so far. We've covered that inspiration is possibility plus invincibility, those two very firm categories, but adding a third leg of the table, which is the intentional practice. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And you've given us tools, you've given us specifics that, for example, work for you, like energy, but also having that unstructured away time where you aren't back to back in things.
Yeah.
I think something when people come to this program and they want to know what can they do, like even if they haven't, which by the way, I'll share right now, and I'll ask Mandy to, I'll do it right here. And I'll ask Mandy to share the link on Amazon. This is Allison's book and it's super. I highly, highly recommend it. It's got examples from the military, from business, from personal, lots of things that you didn't expect would work, but do end up working. So super, super recommend the book, and we'll post the link into the comments. But as people are thinking about this, or even if they haven't read your book yet, what can they take away literally today? What can they do? So right now here in California, it's 11:19 a.m. What can they do by 11:30 as they finish their time with us?
Wow, that's sure
not to put you on the spot or anything. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I've been talking about a lot recently with those that we work with and with leaders and in our community, we call it a leader impact kind of statement, but it's really taking a look and taking the time to reflect. And it doesn't have to take a long time. You could do it in a couple minutes. But when you think about what is your purpose right now at this time, purpose was really the first engine of inspiration that we talk about in the book. It's something that came up in almost every interview that we talked about. And, the truth is, you may have a sense of what your purpose is, or maybe you used to have a sense of what it is, but right now things have just gotten thrown up, in the world. And it's so hard to know now. So many changes are happening. And so now is the time to really take that reflection. And there's two things that I recommend that you think about when you're doing this. So one is, what are the most important strengths and values that you want to really hone in on as a leader, as a member of your community and society, and keep it simple, keep it to, top three strengths and values that you want to just own.
It's just hard to think about 10 or 7. So keep it simple.
Right. Keep it simple. Just what are those top? It doesn't mean that the others don't matter, but what are the most important right now? And then after you've got those 3, the second piece that I want you to think about is, what is the kind of impact that you're looking to have in the world right now? And we think about impact in 2 ways. There's sort of the big impact, the macro impact. This might be, this is who I want to be in my community. This is, what I want my eulogy to be about. Like, this is the kind of bigger impact I want to have in the world. But also equally important is to think about, what's the day-to-day impact that you want to have on, your family, your colleagues, the people around you when you interact with them every day. And so jot down some ideas, strengths and values, impact, both macro and micro. And then if you can consolidate those into just like a statement or 2 or something, it can even just be words, but something that you can put together for yourself as a reminder, as a core reminder of how you want to be and what your purpose is right now. I think it's a really powerful kind of tool. And I wrote a recent article on LinkedIn about how to do this and gave an example of mine, so folks can check that out if it's helpful as well.
That's great. That's great. So in looking at your profile on LinkedIn, they will see specifically how to do this and in this time.
Yes. I think it's called Leader Impact Vision and Statement is in the title of it. I think it's the most recent article I posted up on there. Yeah.
So Allison, we're going to take a couple of the takeaways that people are taking. We're just going to put a couple up so we can see what they are.
Great.
And as we do, we invite you, if you have questions, thank you. We'll hold that one on the screen for just a minute. If you have questions, post them up right now. This is the time that we'll do questions with Allison. So Anne-Marie says that she's taking away that our environment can really either lift or drain our energy.
Whew, yes, it absolutely can. I think people are more attuned to their environment now than maybe they were before, right? Because we're spending more time. For those of us who are, either sheltering or working from home, you're spending more time in that environment. And so you're more sensitive to, you kind of see like, what is it that's working and what's not working, right?
And it's kind of on you. When you step into an office, there are some things that are not, they don't have, you may not be able to control them, but this, I mean, if I like that painting there, then I should have it. If I want a blank wall, I should have a blank wall.
Right. Right. These are little things, but they matter a lot, and you can think about it too, in terms of, your workspace, even your environment, you can extend it to your laptop space and, are you inspired? How do you feel, when you come onto your technology that you're working with, right? I mean, that in itself is an environment that you're working in. And how do you create the kind of environment that's going to bring forward your best effort and your best work? Is it zapping energy from you? Is it bringing you down, right? So these things are important. They influence us in terms of how we show up and bring our best to our work.
Yeah, what a beautiful observation. It's not just your office, it's what you're doing. So in what order are you doing it? What's opening up? What's not working on your computer that you constantly have to what's there? And let's hear what we just put up. Robert says, the importance of building white space into my week. So that's what somebody else is taking away from this.
Yes. That is the, in our book and our research, we came up with, out of our research, we came up with 18 different engines of inspiration, we call them. And engines of inspiration are things that you can actively do or think about that will reliably spark inspiration, right? And it came from our discussions with leaders across all different industries in terms of what they practice and what they do to stay inspired in their work. And this idea of white space, it came up and we write about it as one of the engines. We call it unstructured time. And there's actually a whole neuroscience behind it. We talked to, a professor in neuroscience about this, and it's our brains. They're bombarded with so much thinking, and we're so actively trying to churn and solve problems throughout the day, right? You can kind of feel the gears churning, and sometimes we just need to turn that off. And a different part of the brain in your subconscious is able to sort of emerge, and it actually helps you solve problems, but in a different way, in a less active kind of, I'm trying to solve this problem way. Instead, it's an idea emerging. And it's a really core practice in inspiration. I mean, a lot of people are, watching Hamilton right now as it's showing. And, Lin-Manuel Miranda talked about how going to the beach and having his book, that was one of the core sparks for him to come up with the idea for the songs, the musical, because it was like this brain sabbatical that he was able to take, and just kind of getting that rest allowed these ideas to emerge.
And was it an example of you in the book that you said you really like going to conferences because it sort of lets you put cohesion to ideas that you have, the new ideas coming in? And I just want to add sort of my own observation in reading your book and in reading these specific 18 things that people can try. I feel like just reading your book can jumpstart different connections in different ways, because you're reminding us of things that work for us, like have a hero, or be a mentor, or use unstructured time. But whatever it is for you, it's kind of, oh, I might be able to connect the dots this way.
Yeah, that's great. It's like we give a lot of context and a lot of what we learned, and then the way that you can use it to create your own, inspiration fingerprint is you can extract from that. What are those top engines of inspiration that resonate for you? And once you know what those are, once you know these engines that you say, okay, these are my go-to, like I know unstructured time works for me, then that's when the intentional practice comes in. You can start to build it intentionally into your weeks ahead. And that's when you can, become Jedi about, creating inspiration for yourself, because you know what you can do, and then you plan it, and then you do it. And so that's intentional practice.
Allison Holtzer, thank you so very much. I just want to let you know in the chat, people are saying what a superb topic, inspiration. They can't wait to read your book, and thank you for this discussion. So thank you so much. And thank you at a time when we actually can be more intentional about our environment, our desktop, our purpose, our values. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thanks for everyone who joined in and for your great comments and questions.
Thank you. All the best. See you again at 11 a.m. Pacific. We do this daily, Monday to Friday. All the best.
Bye.